Many African leaders in the fight for freedom, like Oginga Odinga, were also close family friends. Tom Mboya was a rising star who received support from the British Labour Party and led the nationalist fight against British rule. He may also have been a CIA operative. He was a socialist, just like my father, and often came to our house for meals and long talks behind closed doors in Papa's study.
Tom Mboya of Kenya.
A human struggle. The struggle in Africa is one for nothing less and nothing more than the eradication of poverty, disease, and ignorance. And in this context, you and ourselves are all engaged in the same struggle that can aptly be summarized in terms of a struggle for political freedom, for economic opportunity, and for human dignity.
Weren't these my parents' values? They spent every day fighting poverty, disease, and ignorance. They knew all about the struggle for freedom and supported the Mau Mau rebellion in principle, if not its brutal methods. They didn't seem to see the destruction of civilization in Kenya.
It's 1959, the height of the Cold War, the height of the anti-colonial movement in East Africa, the beginning of the civil rights movement in this country, and a year later, a young man from Hyannis would run for president.
With Martin Luther King, John F. Kennedy, Harry Belafonte, Sidney Poitier, Jackie Robinson, and others, Mboya founded the famous Kenya Airlift, which brought East African students, including Barack Obama Sr., to American universities for training as the future leaders of the independent nation. Mboya's foresight helped Kennedy to lure African leadership away from Moscow and to win the black vote in the 1960 election. In 1959, Mboya was only 29, Pa was 52, yet they shared common views about the need for educated Africans to take leadership roles after independence. Could it be that this was what they had discussed in Pa's office at home?
Your father, he was a highly visible person, beholden to the government for his job, sort of cast his lot ideologically with Mboya. That took a certain amount of courage. It got Mboya killed.
Another dear friend of Pa's was Bruce Mackenzie, the Minister of Agriculture and a British spy. In 1976, he helped to broker the release of Israeli hostages held at Entebbe by Palestinian and German terrorists. 1963, John F. Kennedy, assassinated. 1968, Martin Luther King, assassinated. 1977, Bruce Mackenzie, assassinated. 1979, Tom Mboya, assassinated. My father wept, not just for the loss of his friends, but for the loss of the great vision for Kenya that they had all shared. What role had he played, if any, in the political events surrounding these friends and colleagues? How had my parents, Jewish refugees, socialists, woven their way through the intrigue and political tension that threatened to split Kenya apart during the 1950s? Was their allegiance really with Her Majesty the Queen, or with the emerging leaders of the new republic? Who were we in this Kenya that bubbled and boiled around us?
She made sure that the African mentality, especially that one of concealing, medicine man concealing his knowledge of medicine to himself, should be crushed. And we are crushing it by exchanging, the third of us, exchanging knowledge.
We expect this gentleman and other members of the Herbalist Association to teach and train other people in this very ancient science. It's not a craft, it's not witchcraft, it is a science. We all take, it's a science. And unfortunately, with every old person that dies, a lot of knowledge dies also. And therefore, we want this to be continued. We want them to work together with other herbalists from other parts of Kenya.
Challenged us from time to time to be gender sensitive. He also challenged us to be mindful of mixing the ages, that we should involve young people so that we hand our knowledge to them, so that in the end, many more people are able to plant, produce trees, and consume them.
Sawa sawa.
My parents built a way of life in Africa that perfectly matched their belief system as socialists and Jews and gave them a new identity. But we, their children, are neither socialists nor Jews, but have added layers to that multicolored cloak. Now we're called white Africans. What that means and who we really are remains an enigma for each of us. My brother Oscar spends a great deal of time among the Maasai, collecting their artifacts and studying their healing rituals.
A seriously hot walk, but we've made it back down without any twisted or broken ankles, no snakes, no anything. Most of my friends are Maasai in Africa. And I also feel rooted here, but that's different from having roots. But I don't have any cultural identity or ethnic roots or ancestral roots. Ni kama omo pamoja na chumvi. Oh, it's disgusting.
Natoka mbali. Natoka olumuri njibyeji. Ndade. Iradoyo. Mabidi.
It tastes like aloe. It's sort of bitter, now bittersweet. And now I guess we just wait. I mean, that would certainly make anybody sick, I think. Talk about other healing, maybe. Yeah. But let us do that separately. I don't want that to be conditioned.
Yeah,
Are you able to tell him that?
Yeah, I'm able to tell him.
Please tell him that. Well, it's certainly lightening up. But that just might mean that they're... No, I don't know what it means. But anyway, the atmosphere is a bit lighter than it was.
was a Jewish community in Nairobi and a synagogue, and Granny made a point of going. I think it was then that I first really began to feel that I might possibly be Jewish after all. And by the time I was 14 or 15, I was interested in going with her, until Papa absolutely hit the roof and announced that no child of his was allowed to absorb any religion, and particularly not the Jewish one.
My sister Rhodia shares the spiritual beliefs of the Samburu people of northern Kenya. She's also absorbed the mystic teachings of the Kabbalah and feels directly connected to other spiritual leaders in our lineage, like the Baal Shem Tov.
I know I have reincarnated, and I'm one of these people who is a bit of a mystic and a dreamer, and in my dreams I have seen past lives. One of my closest and dearest friends is in fact a spiritual leader of the Borana people. He's a refugee from Ethiopia here. He has a sacred site on the outskirts of Nairobi. He was guided here by the star Sirius. He actually has declared me a reincarnated elder of the tribe. Just going to pour a little milk onto the ground here at the Bassa's holy tree to feed it spiritually. It needs a bit of spiritual care. Right in here. Okay. When I stand in this place, I am not Rhodia. My name is Hadaweche.
This is Zora, my brother's daughter, who lives in Berlin.
And I don't really identify with one place or one culture. I don't really feel like I belong anywhere. I lived for half my life in France, and I think culturally I'm probably mostly French. I don't feel like I belong anywhere. I've always felt like a foreigner, because I'm even more removed from roots than you are, because I grew up traveling as a kid, and you always had this African connection. Being an artist and making art definitely has to do, for me, with a search for identity. It's a way of saying something on that subject without having to pin it down or to be precise. You can have a lot of paradoxes in a painting, say things at the same time, and that to me has something to do with my condition of not having roots and having a mixed identity. Some of my paintings are definitely inspired by the few years I spent in Africa. But they aren't only inspired from my personal experience, but from an importance that I believe that the continent has in globalization.
This is my daughter, Sophie, who is an actress in Los Angeles.
The legend goes that our family, in its ancestry, there is the Baal Shem Tov. If the legend is correct, that would be my great grandfather. And he was the founder of Hasidism. My aunt had said that she felt connected to this guy because of her somewhat mystical inclinations. And I couldn't help but feel the same. I feel like I'm an old soul. I have wisdom, but my wisdom is within the newness of my mind. I feel like I'm a new breed. And for example, when I'm painting or when I'm alone a lot or when I'm kind of meditating on being in the moment, I can sense whether it's that there's another sense inside me or that I am a person that can sense another space that I have yet to be able to define in this world.
The pictures I have mostly of my grandfather in my mind are in Africa. They're not of in Poland. So to me, he's a leathery man that was a veterinarian that worked for cattle and liked the Maasai tribesmen. Of course his soul is African.
Ich bin nach Kenia ohne Geld, ohne Religion.
Pa says that because he came to Kenya with no money, no religion, and no racial divides, he was able to befriend the African. Out of greatest respect, they call him Mzee, or wise old man. In 1966, things came full circle for Pa. At Buckingham Palace, he received a medal as a member of the British Empire, awarded by Queen Elizabeth II for service to God and the Empire. And in 1969, he was also honored by his old university in Brno, Czechoslovakia, for outstanding achievements in the field of veterinary medicine. At last, his many lives seemed to be reconciled as one, except for the imaginary place he called Mann's Paradise that he documented in his annual letters to friends and colleagues all over the world. Here, he escaped the madness of Western development and global environmental disaster. A land, he wrote, where man is still in balance with nature, where an extended family and clannish loyalty are better than a bank account. In the end, Pa lost his paradise in a sea of sand, victim of mismanagement and environmental catastrophe. He said that the old Africa, his beloved Africa, had been corrupted by the West and was dead.